Hello and welcome to another episode of Sports and Songs Podcast. This is season 6, episode number 49. Tonight's a songs edition. Andy, how are you?
Good. Doing a little different from our album reviews tonight from today's news.
Yes, today's news. Today's October 16th, 2025, Andy. And we get word today received of a death of a close friend of ours, none that I don't think either of us have ever met, but Ace Frehley died today.
Yeah, you feel like you know the guy when you followed Kiss your whole life since single digits. You feel like you know these guys, and we're not going to go through the whole. Oh, Paul Daniel Frehley was born this day. You're going to get that from everybody else. We're just going to tell Ace Frehley stories. From what I've heard, about a week and a half ago, there were stories like Ace has to cancel a few dates, health reasons. Well, the man's 74 years old. Let's give him that. Health reasons. None of us are perfect. I'm not the picture of perfect health. He sure isn't. You aren't. So we figure whatever. Then you hear that if something happened, he had to fall at the studio. Again, mid-70s. Did he hurt a knee, hurt his back? What? You don't know.
It was vague.
Yep. Then also you hear today he's on a ventilator with a brain bleed. And I was one video I was watching here just before the show. One guy's like, "Hey, those reports that Ace Frehley is in the hospital with a brain bleed. Family's out, but he's on a ventilator." And as he was doing it, he saw the news come across that he had just passed. Ace Frehley was one of those guys when the band started. He was a spaceman character and did the guitar on fire for the solos. He was. How can I say this? Okay. In that band, he was like what George Lynch was in Dokken. They were both great musicians. They just personalities clashed, Ace was such a great performer. We've all heard the stories about when he tried out for Kiss. So he just kind of walked in there, did it, and they're like, he's our man,
2 different colored shoes.
Yep. He was it. And the one thing I've heard a lot of videos on too, and if you listen to interviews with Ace, it never changed. His laugh.
Oh, yes.
He had that like Joker type laugh. And you look at him, you hear him talk, and all of a sudden, boom, that high pitched laugh comes out. It's like, where the hell did that come from? But he was just he was the spaceman. I mean,
he was an odd character, but just what the rock music industry needed.
Right.
This guy. And
kind of what Paul and Gene needed, I think, kind of yin to their yang type of thing, And then you got, poor Peter Criss was the redheaded stepchild of the group. But, it's been argued. We've had it on this show. The best of solos, Ace's was the best of the 4.
Yes.
Was that the beginning of the end? I don't know.
Well, they did the 4. This was 1978, and Gene and Paul, the band was ready to break up, so to say, and they said, "Hey, let's do our own thing." And you and I have talked about this. That Gene and Paul said, "Well, we'll kind of get on an ego trip here. We're going to blow the other 2 away. This would be a reason to get these guys out because their albums aren't going to sell. It's an easy way to,
right."
A lot of times I see this in Major League Baseball or something, or a stressful situation. They'll bring someone up, put them in a situation where they will typically fail on purpose, and then say, "Well, I guess we'll send you down. You didn't do too well." This was the same thing. I think they set up Peter Criss and Ace to fail, and Ace Frehley put out the best album.
There it is. Yeah, his was the best, and the hit song, if you will, off of there, New York Groove, originally done by a glam rock group called Hello, a British glam rock metal group. A couple years before that, that was kind of his signature song. His hook on it was the Ace Frehley song.
Yes,
like when they did the Unplugged on MTV, he did that one. He always that was his Beth. Peter Criss did Beth. He did New York Groove. 10,000 Land, but or 10,000 Mile Man. But New York Groove, his version. And I was just listening to before he came on about 10 years ago, 10 years ago. Him and Paul Stanley got together for a song called Fire and Water. and Paul did the lead vocals on that. And kind of like with New York Groove, it was a little bluesy. I'm kind of like my blues, And you could kind of hear that with Ace a little bit. He did 2 Frehley's Comets albums.
Yep.
I think we've done the review for one of them. The first one had Rock Soldiers and Into the Night on it. Into the Night, Ross Ballard produced that one, who also produced New York Groove back on the solo albums.
Yes.
And then Second Setting had some good songs on it too. His Ace Frehley one, not the Frehley's, his third album, if you will. That's where he did Hide Your Heart on it, the Bonnie Tyler song.
Yes.
Which I think back in our season 1, I did something on that. But Bonnie Tyler does Hide Your Heart. Ace records it a couple years later. 4 days later, Hot in the Shade comes out by Kiss with Hide Your Heart on it, and they release it. Hide Your Heart was written by Paul Stanley and Desmond Child. Ace released it beforehand. Both versions are incredible versions. That's one of those songs that Bonnie Tyler, Kiss, Ace Frehley, Molly Hatchet did the song. I like that song. I haven't heard a bad version yet because I kind of a mark for that song. I like it. But I think with Ace, I think I love about him too is, especially in the later years, that voice did not match that face. You hear him talk, you're like, oh man, this guy can't get a sentence out. But when the guitar was going and the music was on, he was there.
Yes.
He said in some of the interviews at the end there that I've been watching today, it was business with Kiss. He goes, I get along with Paul and I get along with Gene. But sometimes they say stuff in interviews that really piss me off, he said. Well, now I don't want to do business with you. Mm-hmm. So he says he gets along with them. I think it was borderline got along with them, respected them. Hey, if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be big, but you wouldn't be big if it wasn't for me. Paul and Gene won't admit that. That's my opinion on it, how they feel about each other. Did Ace have his issues? Yes. Sure. But he was more about the music than the money.
Oh, yeah.
He'd be, and I'm not putting down in place what I say this, but Ace Frehley's happy playing Mystic Lake and playing the smaller venues and having a good time and rock and roll. He didn't need the fireworks and the glam and the this and the that and the sellout
arena
Shea Stadium. He was okay just playing rock and roll.
Yeah, Ace was, a self-taught guy. He couldn't read music, never took a lesson, picked it all up. Now, that being said, he came from a musically inclined family. Everyone there in the family was into music. He was surrounded by music his whole life. He couldn't read a note, never took a guitar lesson. And I think the latest ranking I saw that he was the 14th best metal or hard rock lead guitarist of all time. And that's saying a lot. He was good.
The one interview I was watching, they said about, why didn't you guys play at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? You just got your plaques. That was it. Everybody else always played. And part of the deal is they wanted to have backtracks in their ears. Well, Ace didn't like that. Now, I don't know if it was because, like I said, he was old school. He didn't want to hear. He wanted the tracks on the ground, not in the ears. It was not part of the deal. Don't know. And he said one thing at the end there, too, that bothered him. This was an interview just last year. He says it really bothered him when the interviews that came out with Paul and Gene were going, well, we invited Bruce Kulick, we invited Peter and Ace, but they didn't come. Ace goes, I've talked to Bruce. He never got an invite. Peter never got an invite. I didn't get an invite. So it was stuff like that bothered his friendship with those guys.
Yeah.
As musicians, he respected them. He loved working with them. But I don't think he had any respect for them as people or as businessmen.
No, the backstabbing, so to say, and the underhanded comments is stuff that really got to him. He just couldn't. He was a real salt of the earth guy.
Yep.
Loved just performing and could not get into the whole Gene and Paul marketing bonanza, and just loved to play music. So they just bumped. It was not a good fit. But as a band, man, these four got together when they started off in 1973, 1974. These four were unbeatable. But Gene and Paul did treat everyone else like employees, and Ace was part of the co-founding group, but never really got that credit.
Right.
Now, Andy, I'm looking at the 1978, he released that album, and the songs are Rip It Out, love it. Speeding Back to My Baby, also very good. Snowblind, Ozone, love it. What's on Your Mind, New York Groove, that's that Hello cover band, cover song. I'm in Need of Love, Wiped Out. And then he does a solo, guitar only, instrumental, called Fractured Mirror. And then he happened to go on and do several various reiterations on each album he did. He did an instrumental like that called Fractured 2, Fractured Mirror. And so he got into doing those, which are good if you like his stuff, but very talented guy. Like I said, my thing with him was I loved the personality on the stage, his persona, what he did on the stage, and the flair and the moxie that he had, I think was infectious. That was the deal. In real life, like I said, he's not a good speaker. He's a very shy person, and he doesn't have a lot of, I would say, self-confidence probably. But on the stage, behind the makeup, the guy was incredible.
Yeah, I was watching the Tom Snyder interview from back in the day, from the late show or early morning show, whatever he called it. Ace was just hilarious.
Very funny.
When they did the Mike Douglas show or all those interview shows like that.
Yes.
He was just so spot on. He was the reason I watch it today, the reruns, because as a kid, I was like, I didn't care who they were. Oh my God, it's Kiss we're talking. 40 plus years later, I'm like hearing it with different ears, and catching the little one-liners they're dropping, But yeah, we missed. You look at it this way, these legendary bands.
Yeah, I like that.
We're going to start losing them now. And I say this, Ace, they're saying from a brain bleed, from a fall he had in the studio earlier this week. Ace did not lead the cleanest life. He's cleaned up at the end here, yes.
Oh, yeah.
But you figure it would have been, like complications of kidney failure, from the partying and this and that. No, it was from a fall. And of course, what was his first solo album after Frehley's Comet? Trouble Walking. Which, great album. That's a great song. But I'm kind of glad it sounds like the last couple of years, though, he mended fences with Paul and Gene. They kind of agreed to disagree. And I haven't looked real hard either. I've not heard anything from Paul, Gene, or Peter yet.
Yeah, the family announced
a couple hours ago, really.
Yeah, recently. Nothing from those guys individually, nothing from the band.
And Paul and Gene especially are smart enough. They're going to have it worded just right.
They'll bring the lawyers in and have the legalese crafted. Perfect.
I'm kind of surprised they didn't have something sitting in queue anyway, in case something happened. Well, I'm sure they do for each other, because their phone lines are going to blow up between Paul and Gene. They probably got something set. If Gene goes, Paul's got a statement ready to go, and vice versa. Just because the press is going to be knocking those doors down. I'm surprised they didn't have one for Ace, but because their relationship was so fluid, I suppose they didn't know which one to send out at the time,
Yeah, that could be. And we had talked early on that we were surprised of these older bands, Kiss in particular, that no one has died. And the guest
Mark St. John, but
who will be the first? Now here we are, October 2025, and it's Ace Frehley. Probably if one of the four is going to go, you probably would have guessed him, but not here. This situation, this way it happened. A sober, clean guy, 74 years old, clean and sober. Falling and hitting his head on a piece of studio equipment at the studio. So very random, but it is what it is. Now, my favorite you mentioned Into the Night, Rock Soldiers, very good songs. And Ace Frehley was the guy that got me into Kiss. I don't know if you know this, Andy, but
you kind of went the reverse.
He's the guy that got me in, and I started liking the band, and of course I liked the other guys, but he got me in with Cold Gin, Parasite. It was his songs that I liked, and his imagery and his guitar playing that got me into the band, and then I grew to like the band as a whole and individually. But Ace was the guy. I mean, when his autobiography came out, and if you get a chance, if you're a fan of this, it's Ace Frehley, No Regrets. There's a picture more recently, but this has a section, Andy, and I'll have to show you next time I see you here in person. But there's a whole image of photography in here, and images over the years, young Ace, old Ace, medium age Ace, his first wife pictures, his daughter is Monique, and then he was dating and had a girlfriend for many years as a sober individual. And his family was very important to him, but he was more of a kind of a Motley Crue lifestyle before Motley Crue was there. Yeah. He was that kind of guy that was more of a Ozzy Osbourne, crazy, wild stories. This was Ace Frehley.
Gene Simmons sang Cold Gin, yet Ace lived that lifestyle.
Yes. And so Paul Stanley never partied. His vice, his weakness was the women. Gene Simmons, his weakness was the women. Neither partied, did drugs, or even drank. I don't think Gene Simmons ever said he had a cigarette and maybe 2 beers in his life. And so Ace and Peter come in, and they love to have wild parties and go off the hook and go off. And so that made the band what it was, but they were being babysat the whole time by Gene and Paul, I think. But boy, the Ace stories that are in that book, it's very worth reading about his background and his wild times and the number of times he should have been dead or killed himself or got in an accident, crashing cars, overdosing.
Rock Soldiers is a life story song, he said.
It's a whole life story. He's got a lot of great lyrics about his personal life, but those are some of my favorites. Then they did Alive 2, and then he's got Rocket Ride on there. And then Shock Me was another, some of his songs were the best, really good songs, not defining Kiss per se, but his Ace Frehley songs were very good. And he never had high enough confidence to do vocals. And they finally got him to get in front of the microphone. And like I say, I like his vocals. You can't see that's him with the words coming out of that mouth. It doesn't sound like him, especially with the laugh, but he's a talented vocalist. And so once he figured that out and started doing solo work by himself, I bought the album Anomaly. I got the Frehley's Comets. I don't have all the stuff he did. He came out recently and just released that album. I don't even have that 10,000 years where it just came out. And he was in the business in the process of setting up tour dates to go on tour. So this was another active man who was active in business and promoting his latest work. It never stopped. It never ended for him. He never had a retirement. He just kept on doing stuff in his home studio.
And it was pure love of the music. He wasn't doing it because he needed the check. He's got those Kiss royalty checks coming in. He's fine.
Yeah.
He's just fine. So he's purely, he said, when he goes, I don't know how they can say I got no talent. He goes, Kiss hasn't released an album since, in 20 years. He goes, I just did 5 in the last 7 years, whatever. He's popping out numbers. I'm still touring. So, like I said, his was just love of the music is why he did it. He wasn't doing it for the check.
His albums were not going gold, platinum. They weren't played on radio stations, but the fan base still loved his stuff, and he liked getting that stuff out there. He was not making too much money on that, but he loved doing it. Now, Andy, you know this, and I know this. I don't know if the listeners do, though, that the original Kiss logo was drawn up by Paul, I believe, but then finalized by Ace. That cool kick butt Kiss logo was finalized by Ace Frehley with the italicized, the strong, bold Kiss logo. The other thing, because he was into graphics and graphic arts so big, remember when Kiss went on tour with the reunion and did that tour in 3D? He was that 3D guy. He did the imagery and the computer animations and whatnot behind. So when you went to that concert and put on the 3D glasses, when the images were up there on the screen that make you feel like you were falling into space, he was the guy that said, let's do a tour in 3D. And, the entire concert was not in 3D, but for the 6-7 songs that they had you put your glasses on and stuff, that was him behind the scenes with all that graphics background. Very talented computer guy.
Yes. He was one of his own.
And was a former taxi cab driver. We've all seen the old image floating around the internet of him and Paul Stanley's driver's license, their taxi cab driver's license, and his name was it was Paul. Is it Paul Daniel Frehley? I think Paul Frehley.
It's Paul Daniel Frehley and Stanley Ellison for
Stanley Eisen, yes, and they were taxi cab drivers. He grew up where he was Bronx. Paul
was Queens.
Queens. I mean, these guys were all New York, and then ended up.
That's like the one interview I just saw them. He's talking, and he's kind of got from the drinking and the drugs. When Ace would talk, it was a little slow and kind of off the word, but. He goes, and they had their last concert at the Garden. The accent came out.
Yes.
Everything else was fine, but the Garden was, that's what that, boom. You heard that New York accent. That's Ace right there,
Yeah, these guys are unbelievable.
New York Groove has always been kind of a cool song.
And that's a big sports song.
Go back and watch Kiss Unplugged. Watch Kiss Unplugged from MTV. That song got one of the biggest reactions.
Yes. And
it drove Paul and Gene nuts.
Yeah. So that's very interesting.
30 years later, I enjoy watching them go nuts over that now.
Yeah, he was.
I didn't see it then. I see it now.
He was a wild card. This guy. He was a definition of a loose cannon. So you didn't know on tour what was going to happen behind the scenes at the hotel or overseas, doing whatever, and the photo shots. These guys always had to have a side eye on this guy because they didn't know what was going to happen. Most of it was funny, practical jokes, and a lot of laughter. And this guy was a hoot. His personality was just great. But his daughter, his daughter is, I think, 45 now, Monique. And so 45, 46. And he incorporated a lot of her stuff into his solo work then as well when she was little and small child and stuff, and great.
The reunion tours, if you will, the reunion tour since the acoustic thing. Yes, Ace would show up at the last minute, and they always had Tommy there in costume, ready to go just in case. I understand that. I will give Paul and Gene credit for having a plan B just in case. But when you're playing with fire, you're playing with Ace Frehley, don't get mad when he pulls us because you know what you're getting.
Yeah, you're buying into it.
I see both sides of there again. I love Ace, but you know what you're getting when you hire Ace too. It
is a true definition of wild card. One of the best when it comes to the music industry and what he's brought to the music industry. There's a lot of tribute bands for Kiss. That we've seen. You're wearing one of the shirts. Of course, people can mimic Paul. People can mimic Gene. Not much really to do with Peter, but the guys who play Ace, it's a tough role to fill. You just can't jump into that and pull it off. The guys we've seen pull it off. Jimmy is one of the best. One of the best.
And Mixter doing it right now. Mixter's a great guitarist. He's doing a great job pulling it off too. But you know what? That's like saying, hey, go play basketball and be like Jordan.
Yeah.
Go and play Magic Johnson. Okay, you're going to do pretty good, but you're not going to be Magic Johnson. Nothing against Jimmy, nothing against Mixter, but you boys are second best.
Yeah, it is. It's phenomenal to see these tribute bands and how close they are to the real deal. The mannerisms, how they played, the facial expressions, all these little things is just what make it. And that's what I enjoy listening to. And I know you do too. Kissing Time, a bunch of other the band Strutter has been around for a while.
Yep.
The tribute band, but good stuff. Sad day here in Kiss country, but Ace Frehley passed away today, age 74. Anything else, Andy?
No, just like I said, your classic rock stations tonight and all day tomorrow morning. I know here locally, 93X is going to be weird tomorrow morning because Nick was a big Kiss guy. So we'll see what that's going to be all about. Yeah, it's going to be us mid 50 years and older lost a family member today.
Yeah.
Guy who got us into rock and roll, helped us with it.
Influential, very influential. This guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, everyone.
Listen to some old Kiss stuff, some old Ace stuff, and enjoy.
Have a good one.
See ya.
See you next week.